The helmet had protected my head, but my neck was nearly numb from the impact. Fear enveloped me and my knees began to weaken. I slowly and involuntarily slumped up to my knees. I gently set the camera down as I began to see stars from the pain in my upper back. The scraping noise lasted only a second, and now the only sound I could hear was my own panic-inspired breathing. I was shaking violently as I sat there trying to figure out what to do. My mind was not thinking clearly. I honestly thought I was going to die right into the cave. And of course, he was wondering what B would ever do to figure out. And then he realized I had a phone. So at that point, he gets to the phone, alright, and at this point, makes out the call. I used the glow stick to light the phone reel. With fumbling fingers, I managed to plug into the phone into the jack. I put the phone in my ear and heard nothing. The usual beeps to indicate connection with the other phone were not there. Terrified, I pulled the phone from the jack and reinserted it. Again, silence. The line was dead. What could have happened to it? I just talked to B. I found myself nearly sobbing with fear. I knew the only way out of here was back the way I came. Something was there. A third attempt at making contact would be met with the same result, and then of course another plan had to be thought of. Forcing myself to move, I pulled my body onto all fours and started to progress along the cave. I still held the glow stick in my hand, but I had ceased checking behind me. Now my focus was ahead of me. I reached the point where I could yell to B, but I didn't make a sound. I didn't want to stop long enough to talk. Finally, I reached the last stretch of cave before the squeeze. As I was crawling towards the beginning of the tomb, I called to B. He answered back. I screamed to him to get everything ready to go. He asked if I was okay. Since he hadn't heard me on the phone, he had gotten worried. I told him no, and to get everything ready to go. When I reached the rope, I flipped off my helmet and shoved it into my pack. For the first time I realized I had forgot the video camera. Yeah, that was the twist, ladies and gentlemen. The whole video camera was forgotten. Of course you can understand in the middle of fear, clearly that could be a reality, right? Like, hey, the guy had to try getting out. Fuck the video camera, life is more important. It was a fleeting thought. I cared no more about the camera than the passenger of the Titanic cared about the hat or a coat. I tied the pick to the rope and told him to pull through. Then I told him to start heading towards the surface as soon as he pulled the rope through. He asked why, and I screamed that there was something in the cave with us. Just as I started into the squeeze, I felt the wind in the passage increase and lifted the most nauseating stench I'd ever experienced. Damp, rotting, rancid, putrid death. And I almost started to dry heave. This time, through the squeeze, I had no regard for the tightness of the passage. I was scraping my face, ears, arms, and shoulders. Every inch of the squeeze meant numerous scratches to my body, but I barely noticed them. My back was nearly paralyzing me with pain. Once again, I felt the rising need to vomit because of the odor being delivered into my nostrils by the breeze. Halfway through Floyd's tomb, I took a break to catch my breath. I was approaching exhaustion and my respiration rate was through the roof. So of course, towards the end, we had gotten to the top and we had actually come free out of the hole like Floyd's tomb. So of course, ladies and gentlemen, it's amazing how a person's state of mind can alter the perception of time. I'm sure it only took 4 or 5 seconds to sever the rope from the tree, but it seemed like an hour. When the rope was cut, the knot fell to the ground. While the end of the rope zipped across the rocks and over the edge of the cliff, the speed of it causing a humming noise as it went. As soon as the rope was cut, B let out a cry. He dropped the knife and fell backwards. Watching the rope fly over the edge brought the feelings in the passage back to me. I got up and headed towards the truck, and I noticed B was laying there, wide-eyed, staring at the point the rope disappeared. I called to him, which seemed to break his trance. He got up and hurried away from the tree. The cave, the nightmare. Neither of us said a word all the way home. And of course, the epilogue, which is the last page, 5/1901, is all the thoughts of our friend Ted. Now, of course, that's where it all just pretty much ends. So nobody actually died in this scenario. Ted and B got away from the entire scenario. Now, of course, nobody died. Ted and B survived that entire ordeal. Although, you have to wonder what's actually down there. One of the beauties about this creepypasta is, again, the mystery of the unknown. Obviously, they heard screams, they smelled putrid death, and of course, the dog definitely had some supernatural feelings going down into the cave. Now, of course, to understand, even their friend, Joe, was traumatized from this entire situation, and was very quiet coming back out of it. Clearly, whatever's in there could either be some demonic presence, could either be an actual animal,
Have at you. Use this. Now the true lesson begins. Tenaba Operer. Tenaba Operer. Victory shall be mine. Come if you dare. My turn.
Let's do this!
Be in awe.
Bring it on! How do you like this?
My blade is unbending! Elfric, lend us your power! Tenaba Operer! Tenaba Operer! Have I failed?
Here.
All right! Try this!